Good afternoon and welcome to Innovation Alley. We're coming to you from beautiful Gwinnett County and near Atlanta, Georgia. I'm Tim O'Rourke, the Chief Technical Officer for Wade Trim, and we got a real exciting series of topics today as we tour the water tower here at Gwinnett County. I'd like to have my guests introduce themselves. Why don't we start with you, Dave, and then we'll finish with Chris.
Yeah, I'm Dave White. I'm Tim's co-host here. I'm the wet weather practice lead at Wade Trim.
Hey, hello there. Chris Haney with Wade Trim, based here in Atlanta. I'm our officer in charge of the activities here at the water tower.
And our special guest today is Chris Impellitteri.
Nicely done.
I got it. And you're running the lab here, and you're the main focus of what we're going to be talking about this afternoon. Why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, how you came to be here, and what you view the 5-year vision and what we're trying to accomplish here before we dive into some of the other pathogen and pollutant level stuff that we're going to want to cover today.
So my name is Chris Impellitteri, and I'm currently the Director of Research and Development here at the water tower. Prior to the water tower, I spent 22 years with the United States Environmental Protection Agency's Office of Research and Development in Cincinnati, Ohio. The last 5 years or so there were pretty much all dedicated toward PFAS, but my day job was essentially research planning for the Office of Research and Development for anything having to do with water treatment, wastewater treatment, water reuse, stormwater management, and source water protection. I left the U.S. government, not because I didn't like it. I loved my job there. But the opportunity at the water tower was just really too great to pass up. This is a very unique facility. It's a nonprofit institution that is dedicated to advancing water, not only regionally, but throughout the United States as well. And it really afforded me the opportunity to work very closely with utilities, with the community, again, everything that has to do with water, from source to tap and then back to the source again. And then the other thing that I love about this place is I'm a lab rat. And I'm a lab rat. I've been a lab rat since I was young, and I'm no longer young.
Wait. You don't say you're not young.
And this laboratory afforded me the opportunity to get back in the laboratory and really do what I love to do. So that's why I'm here.
How did you get the interest of being in the lab as a youngster? What was your...
I started working in a lab when I was at Virginia Tech in the pesticide residue analysis laboratory. Yeah. And I just got bitten by the bug, I suppose. I saw right away that this was the type of work that you're never doing the same thing twice. I mean, I know in some laboratories it can get kind of repetitive, but where I worked and when I was in the laboratories all through my graduate school and with EPA, you're out in the field collecting samples, you're in preparing samples, you're analyzing samples. So there's a lot of variety in what you do when it comes to water and environmental work.
And you're seeing the manifestation of all the pollutants and what's actually happening when you're doing the draw samples and you're analyzing it.
Yeah,
I could see that. So Chris, we're also housed in this building, the Atlanta operation for Wade Trim, and you're the one that kind of introduced that, say, hey, this would be a good idea to participate in this kind of, beacon of innovation and laboratory testing. Why don't you give a little bit of background on, why we're here and...
Sure. So first and foremost, Gwinnett County Department of Water Resources is an outstanding client, one of the marquee utilities in the country. And I had a fortunate opportunity a few years ago to be a part of some of the initial planning for the water tower. And upon joining Wade Trim back in 2018, recognized an opportunity to take space here and move our land operation to the water tower when it opened up a little over a year ago. And just to take advantage of the entire ecosystem, the opportunities for research and development and pilot demonstrations. And so with Chris coming on board and us being here with our Atlanta operation, it really creates an opportunity for so many great things to happen, and we're just super excited to be here.
That's great. So Chris, you walked us through basically the 3 rooms here in this lab. It's just a full lab, for lack of a better word. It can draw from the plant right next door. So you literally can get access to waste streams from, primary treatment, secondary treatment, final treatment, and you can analyze what's happening as it goes through the waste streams, right? This is a really impressive lab, and I'm glad to see that it's, we're going to help participate in this thing too. So why don't you cover some of the research and technical issues that you're focusing on? I know we talked about PFAS and nutrients and pathogens and metals and all kinds of things as we got in here. Why don't you kind of walk our audience through some of the things you're doing here at the lab?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think first and foremost, PFAS is obviously a really hot topic right now. PFAS stands for per and polyfluorinated alkyl substances. It's a group of substances that some people estimate at 4,500, others may estimate much higher than that. They are all man-made chemicals. You will never see a PFAS that is not man-made, to my knowledge anyway. And what really makes them unique is this carbon-fluorine bond, which is one of the strongest bonds that we know of. So these are very tough customers when it comes to chemicals. And the application of what they're used for, they need to be tough. So they're used extensively in aqueous firefighting foams for putting out organic fires, especially. They're used in stain guards, in stain protectants, in fabrics, carpet, and the like. But you can also see PFAS on paper coatings like food wrappers, or even receipts that you get at the store. They have some very unique properties. Many of them can repel both water and oil at the same time. So they're extensively used in industry. But what makes them tough also makes them a problem because they last a long time in the environment and they can move around quite easily. Some of them can move around quite easily in the environment. Others like to stick, so to speak. So we are focusing here in the water tower on, first of all, establishing analytical capabilities for PFAS. With one of our partners, Metrome USA, we've acquired an ion combustion chromatograph. We'll be using that to measure total organic fluorine, which is really a screening method for PFAS as a group. And then we hope to apply that to the Water Resources Center next door to try to track where this organic fluorine is throughout the entire treatment process. Eventually, we also want to get into working with Metrome to develop and optimize methods for other water matrices, especially drinking water. One of the challenges with this test or this analysis is it's not very sensitive. So when I say not very sensitive, we're in a part per trillion world here.
Wow. And
so we're down to maybe tens of nanograms per liter at best with this total approach, but we'd like to get that lower. So a little bit more about PFAS, if you want to talk about that more, or if you want to move on.
Well, I mean, PFAS, I've been in this industry for going close. It's going to be 40 years next year, right? And this is a relatively new awareness, and PFAS. I'm sure the chemical's always been around, but it's the awareness of it and the detection of and need to address it is relatively new.
Yes.
When you're looking at a 40-year career, Chris.
Yeah.
So why don't you talk about the origins of the sensitivity of it and the need to better diagnose and deal with it as we go forward in a one water setting, right?
Yeah. So the big issue right now is the proposed EPA drinking water standard, which right now the proposed, and I keep saying the word proposed because it's not finalized yet, it's going through a period of public comment. That level for two of the compounds, PFOA and PFOS, which are both what we call C8 or eight carbon chain molecules.
Okay.
Those are both the proposed regulations at 4 nanograms per liter for both of them. That is a very, very low level. And even for the latest and greatest in instrumentation, there are other issues in the laboratory that you really have to be aware of to make sure you're not introducing contaminants into the analytical process. It's really hard to do because they're so ubiquitous. They are all over the place. If we took blood samples from
any one of us,
everybody in this room, 9 out of 10, not that there's 10 people in the room, 9 out of 10 would probably be positive for PFAS.
Well, Ryan's young. He might not have shown up yet, right? But
that's right.
Certainly the older guys.
That's right.
Yeah.
So really we're talking very, very low levels. So that makes the analysis and sampling very challenging. So for example, I'm working with CERDIP right now. I'm reviewing some proposals. CERDIP is DoD's environmental research arm. And I'm working with them to review some proposals on analytical chemistry and developing better sampling methods. So there's numerous organizations that are aware that these are issues, sampling and analysis. For targeted analysis, LC-MS-MS or LC triple quad, LC stands for liquid chromatograph, MS stands for mass spectrometer. LC-MS-MS really is the analytical piece of equipment of choice for targeting specific PFAS compounds at very low levels. So a good LC-MS-MS can get down to single and maybe even below single nanograms per liter for targeting specific compounds. But part of the problem is, as I mentioned before, there's a lot of these compounds. There's potential for a lot of these compounds to be out in the environment. So that's one reason. I already talked a little bit about total organic fluorine. There's another method called total oxidizable precursors. That's where you take your water sample and you analyze it for specific compounds, then you oxidize the sample and you analyze it for the same compounds. Because not only are there PFAS out there that are, for lack of a better way to put it, happy where they are in life, there's a lot of precursors to those compounds that when they're oxidized, they become those end product compounds. And so in some instances, you want to identify those precursors and see how many of those you've got coming into your plant and how they change or transform throughout the treatment process within the plant. And you can use this TOP, total oxidizable precursors method to do that.
But I mean, how do you get rid of this stuff? I mean, you talk about a forever chemical. Are you guys researching new and evolving treatments that can deal with this?
Yes. So if you look at the way that EPA is going about the drinking water regulation, they're really relying pretty heavily on granular activated carbon as absorption media. Ion exchange media are also options for removing PFAS. However, you're kind of left with the same problem. You're just moving it around to another place, right? It's kind of analogous to metals. Metals, they're elements, so you can't really destroy them. You've got to just move them somewhere else.
Place them somewhere,
Yeah, you got to put them somewhere else. So there are some analogies with PFAS. So, however, they can be destroyed. So yes, absorption technologies are a possibility, and even a most favored or a best available technology in EPA speak. But EPA, as well as other organizations, such as DoD throughout the country, are looking at destructive technologies.
Do you have a preference on the best way to deal with it?
It depends on
or does it depend on where you're at?
It depends on the media.
Yeah.
So, for biosolids, I think pyrolysis has some real potential. Right now, in the biosolids world, these are very general statistics, but roughly in the United States, we landfill about 20%-ish of biosolids, and we incinerate 20-ish%. Half go to land application, beneficial reuse of these biosolids. That may change. There are already some states that have moved forward with regulations or bans on land application of these biosolids. Pyrolysis, which is essentially combustion in the absence of oxygen, it looks like the temperatures are high enough so these compounds are broken apart and mineralized, and you're left over with potentially a beneficial biochar after the pyrolysis is complete. Incineration will work to destroy them, depending on the reactor, depending on the physicochemical parameters of the reactor, but definitely can be destroyed by incineration as well. I think one of the big issues in the case of biosolids is going to be how much is this going to shift what we've been doing for years and years, which is in many cases land application.
Which is a big deal to shift.
It's a huge deal.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't have enough incinerators in this country to burn it all up all of a sudden if everybody decides to burn it all up. In Georgia, as with many states in the Southeast, a lot of the biosolids are landfilled.
Yeah.
As long as the landfill keeps accepting them.
Right. And see, that's what we're running into in a lot of places, particularly here in Metro Atlanta, where due to some other drivers, the landfill capacity is being minimized. And so it's forcing a lot of utilities here to
Innovate.
consider new technologies and innovations. And so if you start looking at pyrolysis or gasification, the fundamental principles of those technologies should work, but there's not many examples of commercially viable pyrolysis and gasification systems that have been operating successfully, particularly in the U.S. So
To a scale you would need it to.
certainly to a scale,
Yeah,
but hardly any scale, quite
Yeah.
frankly. And so that's where kind of the race to the front of the line is in our sector.
Right.
And we're seeing some breakthroughs, but it's really got some time. It's going to need some time to catch up to really address this issue. And as we expect more landfills to continue to push back on receiving,
The
these-
regulatory driver is going to force it, right? I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot going on there in the biosolids PFAS side of the conversation.
Yeah, no doubt. And I think some other possible potential technologies are things like supercritical water. Ion beam technology is something that DOE has taken a look at in the past. But for water, these technologies aren't going to be able to handle what I would consider realistic flow rates at a drinking water plant or a wastewater plant. So you may be able to use them to pre-treat. So for a situation where you could store the liquid waste, landfill leachate's a great example.
Yeah.
You might be able to hold on to that and then treat it as you can, and using
At a
these
rate that you could do it
at a rate that you can do it at with these destructive technologies.
Yeah, it wouldn't be 20 million gallons per
Correct.
day.
So Chris, would you test these in the lab, or do you have like pilot tests, facilities on site, or how would you?
Yes, we do have a demonstration facility that's actually right out behind this laboratory here. So we can run those types of pilot scale tests out at the demonstration area, yeah.
So our chief business development officer is upstairs. He was raised by a judge in Livonia. He wanted me to ask you a question about these pollutants
Yes.
that his dad would ask him when he was at the wastewater plant in Detroit for 5 years. Can't you just push this through a cheesecloth and get rid of it? I said, I think that would be a really naive thing to say in this interview. But what it sounds like is that we've got this race of regulatory drivers with the need, right, and a huge change in how we're going to handle biosolids. This is all coming together
Yes,
on what's going to happen in the next 5-10 years, right?
absolutely.
And you're kind of at the point of, this whole movement as far as diagnostics and trying to figure out the best ways of treatment and all that. So this is very
Yes.
timely.
Yes.
That's exciting, I would think, right?
Yeah.
For you. Yeah, it's cool.
So are
Dave?
there other areas of research besides PFAS that you're looking at the water tower?
Yeah, absolutely. And
That
at
was a
the-
setup question. He read your list there.
You did.
Yeah, he did.
So, in addition to, I have three objectives for the applied research program and the technology evaluation program here. One is to work with our partners and
Right.
work with utilities. So that includes our partners here in the building and really any of our partners. But also, we really want to see this facility become a training ground for young professionals, young scientists, young engineers who are looking to get into the water field and need to learn a little bit more about the chemistry and the biology into things when it comes to water and how to work in a water lab. So that's another objective. And then really the third one is to make sure that we work with our local organizations, including utilities, in communities on our own research plan. And one of the big focuses of our research plan that was reviewed, and it is in our 5-year research plan available online, is harmful algal blooms and nutrient issues in our source waters. So Lake Lanier, which is the Buford Dam is about 20 minutes away from here, was built in 1956, and it created Lake Lanier, which is the source of water for about 80% of metro Atlanta. So it's a crucially important reservoir for this area. And there are not big water quality issues in the southern part of the reservoir right now, in the southern part of the lake, but in the northern part of the lake where there are shallower areas that tend to heat up much more quickly than in the southern part of the lake, we're starting to see more instances of cyanobacterial blooms. Cyanobacteria, especially microcystis, can produce toxins like microcystin,
Right.
which can cause real problems at not only the drinking water plant, but for recreational users as well.
How is that being addressed now?
Right now, we're looking at evaluating new innovative technologies for monitoring in particular. So we want to be able to eventually be able to give the drinking water plant, recreational swimmers a good heads up that
What's going on?
this may be going in the wrong direction. You may want to post signs. You may want to consider extra treatment at the plant.
Is it a seasonal notification thing, or is that all year round?
Because we're in Georgia, the growing season, let me put it that way, can be much more extensive than it is farther north, say in New York or Detroit.
Detroit or Cincinnati or any of those places?
Or
up there?
Cincinnati,
Yeah.
right.
So it's a year-round problem. Yeah.
Just about
Yeah.
in some areas, yeah.
So the second point you made, though, was one of the things I thought was really cool about the water tower, is that you're using this as a training and recruitment tool for tomorrow's operators.
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that-
Workforce development.
Is it workforce development?
Yes.
One of the other things I found, being an older guy, towards the end of this career, but I'm seeing a lot of the utilities that I work with around the country struggling with that next wave of young talent. Where do you find it? How do you train it? And they're worried about this operator at X plant in I'm not going to say the city, but he's retiring and he's got 45 years of institutional knowledge going out with him.
Right.
And we really don't have the team behind them that know that
Yep.
level of wisdom accrued. So are you seeing recruitment here at levels that make you feel confident that we're not going to have an issue like this down the road in our industry? Or are you? I guess
I'm
that's my
cautiously optimistic
Okay, cool.
that we will be okay, but we need to make sure that young people and even older people who might be looking for a career change are.
Dave,
Yeah, might be time to swap in.
You ready to get your certified operator's
He got
license?
excited when he
It's been
saw
a
the
while since I've been
microscopes
in the lab, so
Yeah.
You got to teach him how to use a microscope back then.
So I am optimistic that, as people learn more about these possibilities, that there'll be more people going into the workforce. You're talking about a pandemic-proof job. You're considered a critical employee at these plants. So, it's, I think it's a viable opportunity.
It'll never go away, right? There'll always be a need.
Never. It's kind of like bartenders.
Barbers and bartenders.
Barbers and bartenders. Right.
Yeah.
So,
So you're cautiously optimistic because you're seeing a reaction from the community. Yeah, I'd like my younger brother, friend, or whatever to come in and learn this.
And when it comes to the labs, what we're trying to do to integrate our research programming with the training program is making sure that people who are coming through the certification program know about the laboratory opportunities as well and learn as much as they can in the opportunity. For example, another one of our partners, Hawk. Hawk Instruments. We have Hawk instrumentation in there where they can get hands-on experience with their colorimeters, their spectrometers, everything.
It's a win-win for Hawk too.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. It's a win-win for Hawk, and that way they're learning on the latest, greatest instrumentation as well.
It's really cool. Do you enjoy teaching the younger crew? That seems like that turns you on. That's like something you really enjoy.
It's a lot of fun.
You were lighting up when we were talking about the microscopes back there, right?
Absolutely.
Where are you drawing the talent from? Is it just everywhere and anywhere? Are you going to STEM schools, or how are you finding?
The answer is yes.
Yes, yes, and yes?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and yes. We're looking for high school-aged students as well as all the way up through college and even beyond college-age students, especially for the laboratory program. When it comes to a lot of the instrumentation I mentioned before, you literally have to have a Ph.D. just about to operate some of it. You really need to know your stuff, especially when it comes to mass spectrometry. And finding those people is a big challenge. We're competing with organizations like Wade Trim for the best and the brightest, right?
Right.
But hopefully you can bring the best and the brightest in and we can work with them.
Share it, yeah.
Very collaborative environment here. Chris, I've got a question for you.
Sure.
So you've given us a great overview of kind of where things are and kind of where you're headed, but what would define success for you? Say in the next 5 years, where do you want to be in the water tower with your program?
Yeah, we want to be, I think, ultimately in the long term, an internationally recognized area where people can rely on us for answers and results for water issues and advancing new technologies and new approaches forward for the water industry. I know it's not the most common comment for water professionals, but the water industry can be a little stodgy, right?
Oh, yeah.
We've been doing it this way for 100 years. Nothing's broke. Why are we fixing it? But there's always ways to build a better mousetrap, and especially a more affordable mousetrap, right? Mm-hmm. And as these regulations, PFAS are a great example, as these move forward, and if there's regulations in the future, there's going to be more and more pressure on water systems, whether they're drinking water systems, water reuse, wastewater systems, water resources centers, let's just call them that.
Right, right.
There's going to be more pressure on them to
Adapt,
come up with,
innovate.
adapt and innovate, and we want to facilitate that adaption and habilitation.
So our branding manager is here too. So when you hear the word water tower in 5 years, people are going to know what it is, know what they're doing, and use it as a beacon for, that's what your vision is, right? Oh yeah, the work they've done on this or that, you know.
Beacon's a great word, I love it.
Yeah.
I'll steal it from you.
Yeah.
Chris, one of the things that was really kind of influential in our decision making to become one of your partners, we were one of the first sustaining partners.
That's right.
Here at the Water Tower, was the opportunity for shared learning and collaboration, because you're here at the F. Wayne Hill Water Resource Center, co-located on site, but we also work with lots of other clients all across the country. And so can you talk a little bit about how that shared learning and outreach to other major utilities and other treatment plants could work going forward?
Yeah, so, you know, as we started small here when we started, so our big focus has been working with Gwinnett County utilities, and there's 3 wastewater treatment plants, water resource centers.
Water resource centers.
And 2 drinking water plants. But since then, we've had contact with an organization in South Carolina called REWA. They are similar to the water tower in a sense that they are looking to advance new water technologies and promote the water industry within the state of South Carolina. So we can make those connections as well with other nonprofits. But we do want to expand to other utilities throughout the country eventually. And one of the ways we can do that is working with Wade Trim, right? And working with our other partners here at the Water Tower, because you guys are the ones that have the connections out there with the utilities. In addition to our CEO, Melissa Meeker, who used to be head of the Water Reuse Research Foundation and other versions of WRF as it evolved, right? She's got hundreds, if not thousands, of connections in the utility industry as well. We've got a few here and there. But maybe I'm more interconnected, say, with the academic institutes that I've worked with in the past, and also other government agencies
But academia
as well.
and nonprofits,
absolutely,
right, as you described here, don't carry with it if you're dealing with utility, and this is our business, right? You're in it for the profit. There's something in it for you. You're in it for the research and the science and the knowledge.
Absolutely, 100%.
And once you partner with entities like that, it helps your street cred as a consultant. That no, this is an independent agency that we're getting objective information from. Not we're steering it towards a technology that we happen to be good at designing.
Correct.
And that's what I love about this type of organization and working with academia. So that's all good.
Yeah.
So Chris's background was largely in wastewater plants as well, water resource recovery systems, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
Dave and I had a background back 30-some years ago now in dealing with combined sewer overflows in collection systems and how to treat them.
Right.
And you were talking earlier, we've been talking about forever chemicals, and we've been talking about algae blooms, and we've been talking about phosphorus and all the other stuff, metals, bacteria and other pathogens is what our big target was.
Right.
How to effectively, under tremendously variable flow rates, effectively disinfect these pathogens. And there is some, and I could talk about Dave too, I look back at the original river demonstration we did and how polluted that water system was. When I was a young man starting with the design of those, so you go back there now and you can see the improvement.
Yep.
I've been in Cleveland for 20 years now in New York City, same kind of thing, dealing with combined. you can see the improvement once you employ the corrective actions. And I think that's kind of what you're motivated by too, is ultimately we'll see the improvements long term with these types of innovations that are going to happen to deal with all these nasty chemicals.
Absolutely.
So of the pathogen, let's go to the pathogen world. You mentioned something in your outline to us about antibiotic resistant bacteria and other pathogens.
Yes.
So where's your concerns on that level, and how are we going to identify and treat and deal with that?
Yeah, so antibiotic resistance, there is a cross-government agency work group that is focusing on antibiotic resistance. And this can be, at least the hypotheses include wastewater treatment plants as being an incubator for the development of antibiotic resistance, because people are flushing antibiotics down the toilet. You have antibiotics in soaps and toothpastes, compounds like triclosan or triclocarban. And the thought is that they're pushing the microbes to get more resistant in the wastewater treatment plant. There's also theories or hypotheses that the agricultural industry might have a role to play in this as well because of the use of antibiotics in
agriculture.
Yeah. So there's a lot of hypotheses, a lot of thought, but we don't really know if what the relative degree of those drivers is. But we are familiar with the end result. And antibiotic resistance across the board, perhaps,
that's scary to think about.
Mankind in general, since the discovery of penicillin, has kind of been taking a break, since we've been so good at it for so many years. But as antibiotic resistance develops, it can lead to more and more problems. And what we would love to do here at the water tower, we do have digital polymerase chain reaction analytical equipment, the long version of digital PCR, to look at different pathogens and different pathogen populations at the genetic level. One of the challenges with PCR is that you don't know really whether that organism is viable or not. You just see the genetic markers for that organism. But still, it's a very powerful tool for looking at these types of things. And you can use it to identify antibiotic-resistant bacteria in a sample. So we're looking first to try to locate these organisms, and then try to help with the overall move in science to identify where they are. Are there hot spots in a wastewater collection system? Are there patterns that we can identify? And if so, why are those patterns occurring? And what can we do to stop it? The water tower was awarded an EPA grant with Georgia Tech as the lead on looking at Legionella and distribution system disinfectants, as well as disinfection byproduct formation. So we'll be working with Georgia Tech on that. Legionella is thought in the past, there's no doubt that you're seeing an increase over the past 20 years in Legionella and drinking
water. Why do you
water.
think that is? I mean, we were talking about that a little earlier for the viewers here.
My opinion, maybe, this is anecdotal, is because we've been looking for it. And I don't think we've been looking for it as extensively in the past as we have been now.
It's always been there, but we're looking for it more now.
There are many that do believe that there is a climate change influence on the fact that we're seeing increased numbers of Legionella, particularly in plumbing systems and building plumbing systems. But I think a lot of it has to do is we're just looking for it more. But this question in the distribution system is different. The question is, if it's in the plumbing, how did it get there in the first place? Are these organisms propagating in storage tanks? Are they entering the distribution systems from breaks or leaks in the distribution system? We don't know. So that'll be a big focus there for us. Lastly, on the research side, water reuse. That's something that's very near and dear to our hearts at the water tower.
Yeah, there were signs here that said, like, don't drink the water when I went to the locker room. So I wasn't.
All of the water to flush the toilets in the building is all advanced treated water from the plant next door. So yeah, we do our part I guess we walk the walk and talk the talk too, right? So we do research on it, but we use recycled water here as well. I think one of our big focuses, or one of the focuses I'd like to work on here within the next couple of years, is looking at agricultural reuse, particularly with the poultry industry. There's a large poultry industry in Gainesville, which is at the northern end of Lake Lanier. And it's interesting because economically, there's a real economic disincentive to reuse water there. According to the Georgia Poultry Foundation, or Federation, the poultry industry is responsible for 50% of the wastewater revenues. They're responsible for 30% of the drinking water revenues. So there is an economic disincentive for reuse in Gainesville, Georgia.
Wait, do that again. So they're responsible for what percent of wastewater versus water?
The poultry industry is essentially about half of the source of revenue for the wastewater plant.
Wow. Okay.
And about 30% for the drinking water plant. They're an enormous customer. I mean, it's a huge customer base for the plants. This is not unique to Gainesville.
Right.
This happens elsewhere when it comes to water reuse, whether it's agricultural or otherwise. But in other areas where there's protein processing operations and agriculture going on, especially with livestock, there is a need for reuse. So we're looking at working with US EPA as well as USDA to apply their log removal targets for things like salmonella, E. coli, and several other organisms, pathogenic organisms that are associated with these operations, to try to come up with and develop technologies that can meet these log removal targets when they're available. They haven't been developed yet. When they're available in the most economic and efficient way possible.
We've covered a lot of topics. You're all over everything
Trying.
that we're trying to deal with here, and I think this is fantastic. I really enjoyed spending this time with you and seeing this lab.
Yeah.
And we look forward to participating here for years to come, right, Chris? I can speak for Chris in saying that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so why don't we go around the table with some final thoughts before you bring us home, Chris? Dave, you got anything you want to add here?
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is just really exciting, right? It's like an engineering company partnering with, an amazing foundation and research opportunities, the cutting edge of what, I'm in wet weather, so, what's coming up new when it rains? How do we treat that? Can we test it in the lab? Can we partner with, someone that's got some new technology? We're really looking forward to getting in here and trying a few things and seeing what we learn.
Yeah, I would just say that as a sustaining partner to the water tower, it's been a big attraction for some of our new hires and some of our recruiting efforts, both local people in the Metro Atlanta area, but also out of state. So just a tremendous work here that's ongoing. I'm just really excited to see where it goes and how we can continue to work with you and help you. So
Great.
Thank you.
That is great, Chris. And our last topic on our podcast was actually One Water, and we did it with Glenn Diger last month. And the new term out there is no wastewater, just wasted water.
Right.
And it's really about the cycle of all of how we're dealing with all these challenges. And there's a lot of emerging challenges that are happening. I see that you are here kind of with your finger on the pulse of diagnostics and how to best treat and deal with it going forward at scale that we're going to need.
Yep.
Because by 5-10 years from now, you guys will be you can use the beacon, if I gave you that term.
Yeah, sure.
So it's been really a pleasure to see it in action here, and I can't wait to see what happens with the future results of these.
Well, great.
These lab tests that you're going to be doing. So why don't you, Chris, for our audience, bring it home? And I got your name right, by the way.
You did.
But your nickname was Chris I, the science guy. I was going to start with that.
I knew they were going to put you up to it.
You had to.
I don't know if there's some trademark issues though there. So I got to be careful with that. The last thing I'll bring up is that everything we do here, we want to translate. That's the key word, into usable information for utilities as well as the public. I spent a lot of time writing academic papers, and I'm not belittling academic papers at all. They're very important, obviously. But we really need to make the next step, and that is to translate those results into information that's usable and understandable by people in the community, by utilities. How can it be used in the end. And that's really my last thought here. With the exception of, I'd really like to thank Wade Trim. You guys have been a wonderful partner here at the Water Tower.
Thank you.
And we look forward to many fruitful years to come.
You've been a great guest, Chris. Look
thanks.
forward to next time. We'll
Yeah.
probably have another topic to do next year.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, sir. Thanks,
All right.
Chris.
Yeah, you're
With
welcome.
that, I'd like to say good night and have a great day. See you next time on Innovation Alley.